All right.
Hey, Ricardo, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the Parrsitivity podcast today. How you doing?
Adam, I'm doing well, my friend. Thank you for having me on your podcast and sharing our conversation with your listeners.
No, you're most welcome. It's really great to have you on. I'm great, that we've been able to get scheduled for today. And
Yeah.
I just thought I'd like introduce you because you've done lots of different things in the past. You used to work for the government and do lots of that work and service, and now you kind of set up on your own 2 feet, and you've written a book called Life's Biohack, and I'll just share my screen if I can. Um, okay, trying to work this. Okay, it's not working, but
Okay.
you've written a book called Life's Biohack,
I got it
and
right here, so
oh,
I
you've got
could.
it there. Oh,
There you
awesome!
go. There
And
we go. Thanks.
it's no, you're welcome. And it says the toxic environment threatening human health and the extraordinary way the body communicates healing and protection at the cellular level. Like what is like your kind of background, like your story, and kind of how did you kind of get into this field and think about writing a book?
Sure, sure. Yeah, it's interesting. I never, if somebody told me that I would be writing a book about, a science book or a medical book, however you wanted to describe it, or health and wellness, a few years ago, even when I first learned about this field of health, I would not have believed them. But here we are. So you mentioned I work for the government, and about 4 years ago now, 4.5 years ago, I had been on that job about 14 years. And I was just really just disenfranchised. I just wanted to do something, I paid well, but it wasn't challenging. It was uninspiring. I just felt really stuck. And I didn't know, what direction. I didn't know else that I wanted to do though, but I know I didn't want to I didn't want to go, I didn't want to be there. Hey, excuse me. And the
That's
one
fine.
thing that I can control was my health. At that point, I became very in tune with what I put in my body, exercising, what have you. So I was just always looking into and researching and just learning more about health and wellness and the body. And this one random day, I honestly, believe I was guided by the universe, God, however people want to describe it, to a video of this doctor who I was familiar with. And he was actually talking about something else, human health. And he mentioned this thing called redox signaling and its stabilization in the bottle. And I had absolutely no clue what he was talking about. I had never heard of that term before, ever. And they didn't say much, him and another doctor just going back and forth. They didn't say much, but they just said a few things that just really just got my attention. And what one of the things they said was how it helped reduce some of the things it did for reduced cellular aging. And at the time, I was learning about longevity research and things to just increase our lifespan. But also what got my attention was I never heard it before. And it's because it sounded so unique. It's something just intuitively just spoke to me, just said, this is like almost, I don't know if your guests, the listeners can resonate with this, but almost like something you're searching for, but that you didn't know you were searching for almost, that you didn't know was out there. It felt like that. It was like I stumbled upon this secret, and that just led me down a rabbit hole to learn more about the product that he was talking about, but it also the field of health that represented redox signaling, which is vast, but still relatively novel and really more in the research field arena right now, and not in applied in a lot of areas as far as practicing for people's health. So that's where it started, and I just engrossed myself in learning more over the last 4 years, not to write a book, not for any particular reason, but just because I was just really just fascinated with this new aspect of health and learning more about it.
No, that's awesome. And I think we don't always get taught about a lot of this in school. And I think, we kind of have to find our own way in life and figure things out, through learning, when we're an adult, don't we? When we kind of get out of the system. And then I think it's super important, you know, the area that you've kind of gone down, because I think we have to look after our body. We have to look after our health. Physical health, mental health. Emotional kind of. They all kind of interlink really, and
Yeah.
it's great that you've been putting lots of research into it and are passionate about it, because I think there are many things that do affect people's health, and there's society and the government and a lot of people do profit off people being unwell. There's a
Yeah.
lot of big companies that thrive off that, and I think there's a lot of things that you can do to look after your health, so you don't have to take certain things, from certain areas. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, that makes total sense. That makes total sense. That's something, just in, learning about my own health and wellness, just educating on myself, just like, for a lot of companies, I would say most, especially like pharmaceutical companies, is really about the bottom line. It's about how much how much profit they can bring in annually for the owners, the shareholders, what have you. Just something that caught my attention earlier this week. I heard, and my partner, she works in memory care, so this particularly got my attention with Alzheimer's and dementia. There was a new Alzheimer's drug approved by the FDA, or about to be approved by the FDA here in the U.S. However, it has not been shown in studies to really be that effective and have a lot of side effects. Nonetheless, it was approved, or it's going to be approved. And I believe what I read was this pharmaceutical company to mitigate the bad press or people speaking negatively about it. They're going to spend more than they spent developing it. Yeah.
Can you just repeat what you said, Ricardo? Sorry, my meeting got disconnected a second. If you use that the drug that was not really got much feedback on it, that's where it cut out.
Okay, so where did it cut out? So, you broke up just a little bit.
You said like there wasn't much feedback on the drug that was released.
Oh, on the on the
memory care. Yeah.
Yeah, Alzheimer's. Yeah, it wasn't. They were getting a lot of negative feedback, or to mitigate the negative feedback they would get from people from just it not being effective and have a lot of side effects. That they were spend more marketing than they did in their R&D developing it to mitigate that, and kind of like just drown any negative negative press about it with just marketing. So that just kind of speaks to what you just mentioned as far as just things that are out there that really aren't harmful, and companies doing things that to take advantage of people not being well.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think, like you said, there's many different drugs that I think have come out in the past, and have actually, because I watched that series called Dope Sick, and there was like Oxycontin, the opioid,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of people end up getting like hooked and addicted, and that family made lots of money off it, and then I think they later found out about the actual effects of it.
Yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah, I've had some friends that watched that and just said it's just really angry. It made them angry, and just how corrupt things are. And honestly, that's what that kind of corruption or loopholes is what inspired me to write my book. I watched a documentary called Stink, and it was about how toxins are very prevalent in household products, and how the correlation between increase in disease and health conditions over the last 4 or 5 decades correlates to the increased use of these toxins. And there's definitely relationship between the carcinogens and hormone disruptors and other things in the environment around us have played a part in some part, and people, more disease, more cancer, more autoimmune issues. And watching that, just really frustrating and disappointing and angry. And I just kind of thought, like, what can we do? Write our government representatives, do we, protest, donate? And I know the one thing that we can control is our lifestyle. So, I said, you know what? I know about this unique area of health that, that most people, even most medical professionals, aren't taught at school. And, I'm going to write a book. There's other books out there, but they're more for, I would say, medical people. They're written by doctors. So I just wanted to write something just to educate people that might have an interest in learning about something they, were unaware of, and how holistically impactful it was for the body, in a short, digestible way for people, and not, like a thick, textbook or very dense book that went very heavy into science. I wanted to write something that was relatable for people. So that's what inspired me. This corruption and companies having looking for loopholes, developing loopholes for profit.
Yeah, definitely. What do you think are some of the main things that affect people's body? Do you think, like on a cellular level? Because in the book it says, you'll kind of learn, about things that like pollutants in the environment. Like, what do you think some of the main things are? Probably depends where you live, on the level of the pollution. But I know, like, most places are pretty polluted with lots of different things. Like, what things stand out, do you think, or can affect like people?
Yeah, yeah. So I tell everybody I'm not an expert in toxins and
Mm.
the environment. I did some
Yeah.
obviously I did some research for my book, and I introduced some stats and statistics in my book. But from what I learned in the research and from that original documentary was just like some of the loopholes. Like one, and it's interesting because I heard this before. Like what I heard wasn't new, but it just hit me in a different way this time. And one of them was a fragrance. A lot of, and actually in the UK and in Europe, other countries in Europe, they have a lot. The regulations are a little bit more solid than in the US. So some of this might not apply to listeners not in the US. However, something like fragrance is a loophole ingredient. So with fragrance, anything that can include hundreds of ingredients can be what is indicated as fragrance. And so that way, and they don't have to, companies don't have to identify what ingredients go into the fragrance. So it's carcinogens, it's hormone disruptors, it's all sorts of things that if there's things, the chemicals that can interact together to why in of themselves aren't necessarily toxic. When they're combined with other chemicals, they're toxic. So that's one of the things that really stuck out. And you see that everywhere. Fragrance being as an ingredient. Something else that stood out that I'll share was, in just learning in my research, was that something like a lot of companies put in ingredients because they create characteristics for a product that the public just believes is necessary for it to be effective. And an example of that is shampoos. So the idea that shampoos need to be bubbly and have a certain consistency and look a certain way means it's cleaning your hair more effectively. However, that's not true. But companies put a chemical in there to create that characteristic. So when people shampoo, but that one of those chemicals, and I don't know it off the top of my head, can be harmful, is toxic to the human body.
Yeah, no, it's pretty scary when you think about it, isn't it? Because there's lots of things that are out of our control, but then we have to kind of look how we can kind of mitigate responsibility, like certain things that got fragrances in it, or certain shampoos, like things causing, and a lot of the time, just buy things and then we don't have to check the back of it or things like that. And like the different things, like I think I was the States a few times, and what did I have? I think there's a lot of plastic, isn't there? I mean, it's like the same, you know, places, but a lot of places here, like in the UK, using paper. So like things are like maybe paper straws, or but I mean, I know they're trying to like help the environment, but I
Yeah.
think there are certain things like microplastics. That's kind of a big thing now. That's kind of out in the
Mhm.
media. Um, they're saying that affects like people's fertility and stuff like that. There was like that an article about that.
Yeah, yeah, that's crazy. Like plastic is, I mean, we can go on and on about plastic,
Mm.
how it's just the fish, the oceans, just how it leaks, some of the toxins in it, the chemicals in it over time leak into the, bottled water. If food is heated in plastics, that it enhances that leakage of the chemicals. Yeah, plastic is one of those things that it's everywhere. It's just
Yeah.
everywhere and in everything, and we can't really get rid of it.
Yeah.
So
It's, I think there's ways around, like you can try and buy. Some people I know, my family would sometimes go to the supermarket and buy things so it's not in not wrapped in plastic, that kind of thing. But like with the things that are in the environment, because I'm just on a, I know like this says fossil fuels,
yeah.
industrial emissions. I think like you said, petrol, or like you call it like gas. So like like car
Mhm.
fumes, that kind of thing. Um, do you think like they all have an effect as well, like and emissions that come out of factories and things like that?
Do these harmful emissions, like, do
Yeah,
they have an effect on health?
yeah, like over time, like pretty much,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. To some extent, I think it's, people might debate how impactful or harmful they are. I think a lot of times what I've learned is that, like say a chemical might be tested or something is tested to see if it's harmful at a certain amount in a product, right? And it's like, okay, the tests show that this is not harmful to, they might even use mouse or rats or whatever they use. It's not harmful. But something that you don't really hear people account for, at least I haven't, is the cumulative use of that product over time. So it's not that one exposure, it's a cumulative of exposures over time. And then it's these, it's chemicals in this, chemicals in that, chemicals in this, like you said, factories emitting, exhaust cars, it's toxins and chemicals everywhere all the time in our food, even in organic food. Something I came across that I cite in my book is that even in very remote places that don't really have industrial infrastructure, have their toxins. They find toxins and chemicals there, and newborn babies, toxins are found in their umbilical, mom's umbilical cord. So it's just these toxins are just everywhere all the time. So that is that bombardment from so many places. I think that causes such a in our body, in our system. And that's kind of like to go back to like dysfunction in our body, kind of like I try to touch on, is that these are external stressors, all these chemicals or what have you. And our body was marvelously designed to protect itself from external stressors. To when there's an external stressor, be it a toxin, chemical, a cell, becoming a damaged cell, starting to replicate because of whatever, whatever it was exposed to. There's a system to mitigate that, to destroy that, to correct that, and then Mother Earth, we have all these abundance of resources as far as like nutrients, vitamins, minerals, oils, herbs, and which were suitable for us, with that worked in unison synergistically with these internal mechanisms in our body. But because of the excessive use of chemicals around us, this internal mechanism in our body is just overwhelmed, and even the foods that we eat to nourish us have, toxins and chemicals in them. So that's kind of like why I wanted to educate people on, at the very root level, how our body protects itself and heals itself. And with that knowledge, what can they implement to further protect themselves?
Yeah, definitely. I think, people need to be aware of these things because there's many different things that, are harmful or have an effect, and people might you be using these things on a daily basis. I mean, especially, maybe in a cleaning role or something like that. If you're inside and there's no ventilation and people are spraying stuff and cleaning things and you're breathing all that in, and you think, you're doing a good job cleaning, which you might be, but then you're breathing in these chemicals,
Yeah,
and that can cause like asthma, it can cause like irritation, skin problems. And I saw an article or a video online, and it was about like the military in, I think, Afghanistan or Iraq,
hmm,
and doing those burn pits and chucking all the waste on these burn pits and burning it. But I mean, I've got a friend who's in the military in the States, and he said they
uh-huh,
would just burn all this stuff, and because their base was next to these burn pits, the air would blow over onto the base, and
uh-huh,
then he said like God knows what we're breathing in,
yeah,
and I think quite a few people like had maybe cancers, or don't quote me on that, but I know that there were some people who
yeah,
had issues randomly from
yeah,
these burn pits blowing over. I mean, so it shows you how burning of waste can cause like health problems or like nervous system problems.
yeah, yeah.
There's loads of
It's
things like we don't think about.
yeah, yeah. It's yeah, and it's more and more people on the planet, right? So it's just more and more stuff to deal with and handle. And you said something that was really, a tool or practice that people can implement to just, one of the things they can do to mitigate the toxins in their home is to open your window. That's in my research, just ways to things we can do to mitigate the toxins and how much they impact us, even just a little bit. One of them was opening your window. Just like, oh yeah, open the window for 5 or 10 minutes a day. Might be harder in the winter, but yeah, just get the toxins out. My parents, they're a little older, and I'm a nomad, so when we're back in that area, we stay with them a little, and they just use products that I wouldn't use. So it's just kind of like I really now every time I'm there, I was like, I just need to buy them some, or buy my own, because I'm just like, oh man, it's just all the stuff that yeah, just not good for us. So
Yeah, and I think I found that in candles, like you get in this country, like in the UK, you get these like scented candles, wax candles, this kind of thing. And I remember I went to someone's house and they had like one of those like a fragranced candle, and I remember
mhm,
having a sore throat like after being there, and I didn't
really,
feel right. Yeah, and it's like I think you can get not natural kind of things that are probably made in a lab. That
yeah.
makes me want to cough talking about it. And and yeah, like I think there's lots of things that we don't realize that may be harmful, or we're quite sensitive to. And if I ever get like a candle or something that has to be like organic or natural, where it's not
Mhm.
synthetic kind of scents. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever found that or seen that. And you can get these diffusers where you get like chemicals you pour into it and it makes the room smell nice.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I've experienced that, not as far as reaction, but just again learning more about, and it's just learning more about all these things that just again it's this cumulative effect, cumulative impact of all the chemicals coming from so many different areas. Um, and so they have sent candles, air fresheners, the synthetic ones, just releasing chemicals. And honestly, my partner and I, we were staying at some place for a few months, and it had like a little odor. And so we had some scents, and it wasn't that strong. And we put in some other ones that the owner had, but they were the synthetic kind, and it was much stronger, right? And we just had this kind of like dilemma, like, oh gosh, like which one do we want to use? Because we wanted the smell as to overwhelm the smell, the odor in there. It wasn't terrible, but recognizing like, okay, this is a chemical, just constant chemical in the air. So it can be difficult sometimes. It's just about, making decisions and what works best for each person.
Yeah, I found that with car air fresheners. I've bought car air fresheners before, and they're only small, and I've stuck them in the car and I'm driving. I remember my eyes were like, you know, like stinging.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know what was in it. I don't want to know what was in it. But
Yeah.
it made me like, I must be quite sensitive to certain things. But
Yeah.
yeah, and you don't know, do you? Like what's
No,
what's in
I
certain
don't.
things.
Yeah, I don't. But that's, I mean, in a way, it's kind of good you're sensitive to it
Yeah.
because you don't want to be like, well, okay, this isn't good. This is bad. I don't want to. I know I can't be around this. I can't have this because this is not good for me. As opposed to myself or others who you don't even, because that's something car air fresheners. I didn't even think about that. This is, yeah, I just get a car, the gas station or somewhere and get a car air freshener and like, okay. And then I was just talking to somebody and it's like, yeah, don't use essential oils, use something else. And I was like, oh yeah, he's probably, yeah, it's like, so it's just, just educating ourselves and
Yeah, there's things all the time, isn't there? Or what do you think about because I know that, when you buy, say, fruit or certain foods, they have like uh things to stop the insect. What was it called? The I've got on the like pesticides.
yeah.
So for pesticides and fertilizers. What do you think about that?
Oh, I mean, I do everything I can. I try to do everything I can not to eat food that I know has been exposed to or not or um, been sprayed or
Mm,
pesticides has been directly utilized on
yeah,
them. I would like I've touched on this a little bit in my book, and you mentioned I worked in the government. I feel like that was something else that after watching a documentary that was kind of steeped in my memory. I worked there for several years, and one of my roles was I reviewed or I saw not customer, U.S. citizens that were complaining about toxins, and because it always involved around like some new rule or regulation that was up for renewal or being proposed. So the public would have an opportunity to just send in comments to share their opinion. And some, a lot of times you would see farmers and organizations, proponents of a pesticide being used, and they would why it was okay and safe. But a lot of it was the public, people sharing their stories about the impact it had on their life, themselves being sick, a family member being sick, a neighbor, how it cost them financially, how it, sometimes people lost their life because of, pesticides and, Roundup. There's something here to really use a lot in the US. And yeah, it was so just seeing a lot of those as well would include research and studies and a lot of I remember some of them specifically. It starts with a G, glyphosate, I think it's called. Like some court decisions where specific companies would have to pay out because it was, their records had, they knew it was harmful and things along that line. I don't want to, I can talk about that all day, but all to
yeah,
say, I would see a lot of the impact, I would read about a lot of the impact that these chemicals and pesticides specifically had in people's life. So yeah, that was another thing that kind of motivated me. So I try to always eat organic. I know that's not, there's a lot of debate about how clean and pure and if that is and how much you're really escaping the exposure. But if it's, if it's even a little step in the right direction, I try to. Like we're in a hotel now, and it'd be an apple or something somewhere, and I'm just like, what, I just won't eat it. I just won't eat it. So
yeah. I think people are. being more mindful of where things come from. And I think, like you said, it's always good to be, organic, and I don't think there's any harm in that, in my opinion. And I think, like, I will always, like, rinse or kind of
Mhm.
wash, say apples or whatever before I
Yeah,
get them. Um, but I think a lot of people just see it and they'll, eat it straight away, and you're like, well, where's it been? Is anything
yeah.
sprayed on it?
Hmm.
Because you just don't know. But at least if you rinse it, then you're getting rid of, or some of it, off the fruit. And also, I know I don't know if you saw, like, is it to do with like, I know especially in America, I don't know if it's so much in Europe, but like animals having like hormones or things pumped into it, if that makes sense, or certain foods.
Yeah,
You ever,
yeah.
you
I
ever
know. Yeah. Hormones, chickens, cows being injected with hormones, them. Um, One of the big issues, this is something else I would come across a lot working at the EPA, is the effectiveness of antibiotics, how the overuse of antibiotics has rendered them not as effective when people really need them. And some of that overuse is maybe this is debatable. Well, I'm not an expert in this, but from what I read, is just people being prescribed antibiotics when they don't necessarily need antibiotics, being prescribed by their doctor, but also antibiotics and things being injected into animals, farm animals that people consume. So then again, that's whoever eat that is being exposed to that antibiotic or those hormones that might not, animals might be injected hormones to for the growth, just something that makes them more, at the end of the day, turn more of a profit, right? And but is that safe for human consumption? Maybe once, maybe twice, but again, it's that cumulative exposure over time. So yeah, I definitely have heard about that. Yeah. Another reason to
yeah,
just try to eat. The best, I was talking to someone recently, and she started growing her own food. So I know a lot of other people are proponents of that, controlling our own food supply as much as we can.
yeah, definitely. I think it's important, isn't it, do research on this guy. I mean, a lot of people would just kind of go through the lies, buying things and eating things and kind of doing, as we need to, as humans, to survive and eat and everything else. But sometimes there might be something kind of going on, or there's a lot of things that do happen that we're not really aware of, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I don't know if you've also heard about, like, tap water. Have you ever come across like that, or looked into that, or researched it? Because I know, like, certain tap waters have got high levels of fluoride and the effects of fluoride. And
Hmm.
because I did a podcast actually with a
Hmm.
guy, and he was talking about is it something called deuterium, which is in water, um, and was saying that there's higher levels of it in certain places. Know in the UK we've got, like, very strict kind of regulations on the water and how much fluoride is in it, because I think they say, like, fluoride's good for your teeth and things like that. But then I think there's certain health effects that it can have.
Wow.
You ever looked at, you heard about, like, tap water and
Yeah. I've heard I haven't researched that extensively on my own. I have heard that, just tap water isn't the maybe the best source of water with, again, it's the fluoride that is treated with. And I know there's a debate about fluoride, yes, fluoride, no. I haven't researched that extensively. Excuse me, we use we just use a filter water to filter our water. That's debatable. There's always information, pros and cons with everything. So I try to, me personally, just when I can, try to travel a lot. So sometimes I can't, but I try to mitigate how often I use tap water to drink or
yeah,
cook with.
yeah, definitely. And, like, with your, like, your book, so, like, what are some of the key, like, takeaways you'd say in your book, or you think people should take away, and what was some, like, the things that you were passionate about, or any areas you was passionate about whilst doing your book?
Um, I would say just as far as takeaways from my book is, there's, we all are familiar. Well, maybe not all, but we've heard of DNA, right? We know DNA, and everyone might not know all the intricacies of DNA and how it works in the body, but we have some understanding of it. We know it's important for the body. Stem cells, stem cell. Most people I imagine have heard of stem cells. Know, again, might not know how complex the complexity of how they're working in their body, but stem cells just become different kind of cells when they're needed, and there's treatment, stem cell treatment. So we all know nutrition. We're taught in the States, nutrition. It's the nutrition tree when we're very young, so we had that understanding. But at one point, DNA wasn't that wasn't commonly known. Same for stem cells. And at some point in time before, many decades ago, neither was nutrition. So this area of science, redox biology, redox signaling, is something that everyone will know about at some point. It's very vast. It's a lot of research being done in it. So the biggest takeaway is, in a very short, 30, 40 minutes, people can read this book and gain the impact and the significant role of this function, or this area in the body, getting ahead of the curve, moving forward. So I think that's just the biggest takeaway. In a very, without a really long webinar, without going to school or doing all the research that I did over the years, you might not get the intricacy, all the intricacies on a medical level, but you will have an understanding of how it works, how it's created in the body, and the different areas, some of it, because it's every area, but just some of the specific areas in the body, I list that it plays a role in.
Where do you think, like, the most important area is? I know they're all important, but is there anything that you kind of focus on, like, mainly,
Oh, that's a good
that,
question. That's a
if
good
you could,
question.
like, yeah, you could pick of one?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's a great question. Oh, no one's ever asked that. I've never even thought about that in that way. I would say the immune system. I would say the
Mm.
immune system, because the immune system is, someone else might say something different, but I would say the immune system, because, there's certain things that are going on in our body we don't think about, we don't know. So, for example, when we get a cut or bruise, people have children, your child gets a cut, what have you, how our body repairs that cut, how it knows how to regenerate the cells, how that cut close when the pathogens and foreign invaders that, even if, just get a little cut, there are some germs that get in there. How does your body kill those foreign invaders, right? Like, when, virus, like all that, so just how does our immune system know where to go in the body when there's a threat? And this, at the most foundational level, this area in the body, or these signaling messengers, are to direct the immune system to where it's needed in the body, and helps. And also some of them are the bullets that kill the pathogens and foreign invaders as they enter the body. So I know that's something that, the immune system, vitamin C, vitamin D, we innately know those things are good for the immune system. So this is just a little bit about how the immune system is directed to where it's needed in the body.
No, I love that, and I think that's an area that, I think about a lot as well. And I think that was something that is, since COVID and that kind of thing, I think
Yeah.
that's something that was on everyone's mind, or most people's mind, is, because at the start we didn't know what this virus was. Is it going to kill us if we get it? Well, what's the effect going to have, and all the rest of it. And, you know, people were saying, like, it's okay if people take a vaccine, that's up to them. But some people were saying, they want a vaccine. And there's a lot of debate around that even now, and the effects of it. And that's a different conversation. But I've had COVID twice. I'm still alive, and some people, unfortunately, aren't through that. But I think it's made people mindful. Some people mindful of, how to look after themselves and the right things to eat, to better get over a cold or flu or COVID, that kind of thing. So I know a lot of people weren't kind of looking after their body or their immune system, and probably had a tougher time getting over it, or so I think it's very interesting because a lot of us aren't aware or weren't aware too much of what do we take, or what's going to help us get over it. So yeah, the
Yeah.
immune system's interesting, really interesting. It's fascinating, and like you said, you cut yourself, and your body knows exactly what to do.
Right, right, yeah, yeah. And if I can, let me ask for one, but it's another one that I can, if I can share another area,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that,
of course. Yeah,
yeah, and that's homeostasis. So, for and I imagine most people have heard of homeostasis, and homeostasis just means essentially balance. And in terms of the body, it's just a healthy balance in the body, right? And just something you might, we might hear about, want to maintain a healthy homeostasis, and homeostasis is very important. But something I didn't know, like, well, what exactly is being balanced? You know what I mean? Like, what is exactly the healthy balance? And in my book, with probably 2 pages, with the picture, I'll make sure I try to include a lot of pictures, to kind of bring it to life a little bit more. You will know what is being balanced. At the very basic root level, what is homeostasis, and what is being balanced?
yeah, because it says here, like, if I just Google homeostasis, British, also so this Western version, the state of steady internal physical and chemical conditions maintained by living systems. So that's basic definition.
Yeah.
So homeostasis, you mean like the operating, normal functioning of a person's body and the organs, you mean?
Yeah, yeah. So I think how I always thought about homeostasis was my systems being in a healthy balance, running effectively, my stem cells being everything, just everything just being on a healthy balance, just operating as they should. But the way a good analogy is kind of like two tennis players, hitting the ball, and that's homeostasis, right? Just as long as they're in flow, the body's in a healthy balance. And if they one of them misses the ball, or hits a good shot and goes out of bounds, and that is some area in the body is being thrown out of homeostasis, and when they get back in play, it's back in homeostasis. So, but at the deepest level in the body, what is being balanced. So take, for example, the heart, right? When the heart isn't healthy, there's a lot of things can happen while the heart isn't healthy. And so say the heart isn't healthy, but what is the mechanisms in the body that are out of balance? So what are the cells, or what are the messages being sent that's causing it to be out of balance? It's this messaging system. What my book is focused on, that is what is not in balance. The production of these messengers or molecules, at the very root level, is what has been thrown out of balance. And it's kind of like, if you look at like a diagram, you have the body, you have systems, then you have organs and tissues and cells. But then under that it's kind of like these messengers, these molecules, that for all life is most foundational aspect of health, that needs to stay in balance for homeostasis.
Mm. No, I get that, and I think like there's many different things that affect homeostasis, and
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I think like people's like nervous systems as well, isn't it? Like people's
Mhm.
how they react to external stresses, if that makes sense. Like, so there's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
these, I think, like the reacting to something and responding, and then they're two different things. And like you said, it might be the fact, if someone's stressed by something, They
Hmm.
become accustomed to that stress, and then they're just continuously having cortisol released into their bloodstream. So then they,
Yeah.
the fight and flight response is firing off. So that's like that kind of messenger, isn't it? Like you said, in the homeostasis that's within the person's system, their system's reacting to something. And I think like it's really important, and that depending on maybe someone's homeostasis is going to depend whether they're going to be healthy in themselves or not, or because you see people who are quite relaxed and able to cope in certain situations, but their homeostasis is kind of maybe adapted and it's under control, whereas other people's homeostasis might be firing all cylinders, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. It's like yeah, it's right. That's why cops and people in the military go through so much training, right? So when they are in those, real events, when people are really shooting at them, or, a situation can escalate, they've gone through, all that training, and so their body reacts, in a very level, balanced, as much as possible, controlled way, to that event. Yes. And like you said, whatever the case, it could be, just someone cutting you off, so something that just throws you off. It could be in your daily life, your body, just something that throws everything out of whack. And it could be a cascade of unhealthiness as it applies to the body.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. I just got some random questions I was just thinking about. It's
Yeah, that'd be great.
different from what we're talking about, but like what in terms of role models, like who say if you pick a few role models, whether they're like personal to you or famous, who would you kind of like think about?
Role models. That's a good question. I have a few. My parents, that's maybe cliche, but definitely my parents, just their character and kindness, and yeah, generosity is something that yeah, I'm just proud to be raised by them. And I don't say this enough, but like my partner, her name is Ruthie. She's a role model. And she's a role model. And I try to tell her this as much as possible. She works with people with memory care, more like an administrative director level. And
Yeah,
she's
yeah,
working in that arena at some point, and since she was like a teenager. And I get to see her, on a daily basis, do her job. And yeah, she's on this. I tell her all the time, she's on this planet to work in that field. Like, that's why her soul, that's why she came here. So, and just seeing her just excel and just do what she does it feels amazing to be next to someone who just does what they love, even when it's difficult, you know. And then as far as famous people, not to get, political, but Barack Obama is someone that I admire, just his character, how he his eagerness to support the youth, is and develop, is something that I admire, and just how he communicates is something that I admire as well. Someone, Michael Beckwith, he is someone, he's kind of like a spiritual thought leader. He's someone that I look up to a lot, just as far as communicating to people, just stepping into your best self, being your best self, shining, and getting outside of your comfort zone. And so Richard Brooke, he's someone that been a mentor and coach of mine. He's not famous, but some people have heard of him. He's yeah, he's someone I really look up to. So those are some people that I admire.
no, that's awesome. No, I think it's always good to have role models, isn't it, in your life? And especially people close to you, like you mentioned, your partner and your parents. I think that's really, really awesome. Because there's people in our lives who can inspire us and things like that. And we can learn from a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And I heard, I forgot, yeah, I forgot what it was, the exact term, but or what the exercise is called. I did it in a coaching program once, but it just, find, a few people, and take something about that, their characteristic, their personality, their personality that you identify with, that you want to exhibit in your life, and maybe put all their faces and what that is on somewhere, and and just try to master that in your life.
Yeah, definitely. I think the people you surround yourself with, isn't it, definitely has an impact on who we are and your environment, that kind of thing.
Yeah, 100.
And also, like, is there anything that you're currently working on, or anything that you want to promote, or like where can people find that kind of thing?
Yeah, definitely, like my book, any person, anybody that just wants to, just learn a little bit more about this area of body, this new area in the body that's really, novel but vast at the same time. You can find it on Amazon at Ricardo's new book.com. It's an Audible ebook, Kindle ebook, and paperback. And also I love to travel. I've had a lot of growth and shift in perspective about life as far as travel. So that's something I love talking about. I'm working on some things as far as developing I call it immersive volunteering experiences for people. That's probably something that won't be, available for a month or two, but that's something I'm really passionate about, because I've had a lot of transformation as far as my travels, and specifically volunteering abroad. So that's something I love. I want to share as well.
No, that's awesome. And like, I'll definitely share your book in the link as well, and do that, and put
Cool.
all your information there, and I'll promote it as well for you.
Thank
And
you.
you mentioned like traveling, because I remember when we first talked, you mentioned
Yeah.
traveling, and that's what you do. Like, how do you think that's kind of molded and kind of changed you doing that? Because a lot of people will paint this picture and get comfortable probably where they are,
Mhm.
and not travel or not go to certain places. And some people might say, "Oh, don't go to that place because it's not very nice, or it's too cold there." And then people don't go travel because they've took what other people have said. Like, what? How do you think it's kind of like changed and developed you?
Oh man, it's so many ways, so many ways. But I'll share one aspect of that in my life that travel has helped me. I feel like has helped me is not to hold on to the things around me in life so tightly that I feel are so important because of the paradigm that I live in, as far as my country, my family, societal pressures, just those things that just feel so important, or the things we feel like we need to buy to be happy. Not that it's okay, not that it's not okay to want to buy things, but that just holding on to those things so significantly. Because when I traveled, not having certain things and not seeing what other people don't have, not seeing what people have, um, seeing what their community finds important is not what my community feels is important. It could be what they wear. They wear a completely different, attire, and clothes. They don't want what I want. And so it just really helped me just shape what I hold on to as important, or hold on to it so tight to shift my energy.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's that perspective, isn't it? A lot of people appreciate certain things and see things differently because they might not have the things that we rely on, or the things that we think
Yeah.
that we need, but then they're grateful and they're like, a lot of people might want there's nothing wrong with like clothing or whatever. People like different
Mhm.
things, but they might be okay just wearing whatever, that they're not needing that validation for, I don't know, having certain things.
Yeah, right,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, and
but definitely.
yeah.
Oh, sorry, it's fine.
Oh, I was going to say, just really quickly, just I mentioned I had a really powerful experience volunteering 4 years ago, like literally 4 years ago. This time I was in Cartagena, Colombia, volunteering, and I lived in an apartment with two people who didn't know any English. They were cousins. They were a little older than me, and it was a small apartment. Just not how I lived at all, and I didn't have the things that I was accustomed to. And I was volunteering, and that's what I call it immersive volunteering, because I was really immersed in that environment, and I didn't know anyone. I made friends. And through that experience, living differently, I was very content. I was very content with what I did not have, and this might have been probably one of the happiest, times of my life, really. And that's when I really was like, everything's really just most of the times okay. It's really okay. Yeah.
I think it's awesome that you've had that experience and you've kind of grown and shifted and stepped out your comfort zone as well, and then gone into these situations of new people and new places, and learn and seen what other people go through and where they're at.
Mm.
And I think it makes you think about your life and yourself, and understanding other people and seeing different cultures is important, isn't it? I think this is why they say people should travel, because you've changes how you think and what
Yeah.
you see.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, it's been scientifically, I think, it's been proven that when you travel, it builds new neurological pathways
Mm,
in your mind, in your brain.
mm,
I feel like that's because just my experience, just learning a little bit how the mind works. Our minds are, for the most part, kind of, really running on automatic to some extent. We have these dominant neurological pathways that the brain tries to think is keeping us safe and using less energy, just tries to direct us down those normal paths most of the time, if it can. And when you travel, if you're in a new environment, it can't do that. It can't. You have to. It almost kind of like wakes your senses up a little bit more, or a lot more, depending on where you are. And so it's just you almost feel like you're alive in a different way. And that rebuilding those neurological pathways, and if you're doing something new, I was volunteering, I was learning to play the violin, I was learning Spanish, I was doing all these, things cognitively that were challenging. It was just like, developing these new neurological pathways and just developing and growing in a different way. Adam, you're frozen. Hey, Adam. You there, Adam?
sorry about that, recording. My
Yeah, yeah.
connection went.
Yeah, no
um
worries, no worries. No
but
worries.
yeah, you said where it came to was, you said it changed you how you think and build new pathways.
Yeah, yeah, that was actually, I think right where I left off at. Yep.
But
I
what we'll
just
have to do is,
What'd you say?
Sorry.
I said, yeah, that's right where I finished, I think.
Yeah. Because what I have to do, we can always do another podcast, and we'll talk about your adventures and in your travels, and because that we can do a whole new topic on that as
Sure.
well, and go
I would
into
love
that
it. I mean,
next time.
yeah, that'd be great. I mean, I can talk travel all day.
Yeah, we'll do that. But yeah, no, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Ricardo, and I
Yeah.
really appreciate your time, and I think it's great work that you're doing, and it's really important, the things we talked about, and I'll put those links in the bio, and I'll promote your book and put that out there as well.
Cool, cool. I appreciate it, my friend. I really appreciate it. Yeah, it was great talking, and yeah, I love the questions. It was like different and new questions, so that was I love that. I
Yeah,
love the conversation.
oh, it's awesome. But yeah, you take care, and I'll be in touch with you soon. We'll do another one.
All right, awesome. Enjoy your day.
You too.
All right, man.